Welcome to live answer time for November 13th, 2021.
Hey, Rob.
Is that Tom there?
That's me. I was intrigued when you posted that wonderful Rubik's Cube animation. It looks to me
I
like you
just,
figured out how to do.
you just popped in. I wasn't hearing you for like the first
Sorry,
two sentences.
sorry,
Say
sorry.
that again.
Uh, I, it, it looks like you figured out how to do the pose on and off after seeing your wonderful Rubik's animation, which was flawless.
Well, thank you. Um, I have good news and bad news about that. The good news is I found a better workflow, and I think once you see it, you'll agree it's much simpler. Um, the bad news is I haven't got that idea of constraints that we could switch on and off to work. I was thinking that it might be something along the line of the switchable IKFK.
Right. That's what I was thinking,
Um,
but no.
no, it turns out that's well. First of all, the switchable IKFK involves a one-to-one correspondence between the end of the chain and the beginning of the chain. And with our Rubik's Cube, we have more than a one-to-one correspondence. We have our center, and we might have like 9 other cubes that we're trying to move with it. And then in
Right.
IKFK,
Right.
these goals, these various goals, they always end up being unified once you switch. When you switch to FK, the IK target is constrained to the end of the FK chain. When you switch to IK, um, the FK bones are constrained to follow along anyway. Um, so it's a somewhat different situation. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I haven't quite seen through a way to make that work yet and survive after multiple rotations. However, all
Okay.
is not lost.
You're
If you want, I will show you the new workflow.
I would love to see it.
Okay. Let's see. I haven't posted the video from last week because I decided it wasn't the best way to do it. So what I'm going to do here is sort of
I
retread
think
some of
that's
our old
smart.
ground for anyone who watches this new video. Um, Let me get out an older version of the project. I'm not sharing my screen, am I? I should share my screen.
No.
Okay, here we go. Now, you should be seeing Animation Master.
Yes. And I think
Um,
you're absolutely right about posting this newer video as opposed to last week's. Yeah, that's a good idea.
let's go back to. I'll have to open up the folder here. Let's see. Okay, you presented a model with colored faces in the convention of a Rubik's cube, and the first thing we did, we sized that so that it was these cubes were on 2 centimeter centers, so we could use snap to grid uh, to easily. Let's just turn all of these on. To easily place a bone in the center of a cube. And I think what we actually did is we did 3 of them, and then we used a controlled drag over here in the project workspace to duplicate sets of 3. And then we dragged those sets of 3 around and duplicated again until we had this 3 by 3 by 3 array of bones. And each of these bone
Right.
centers is in the center of a cube. So that was
Right.
that was my first gambit. Now, if we were going to do the thing we did, where that I ultimately did last week, where we were going to choose a set of, like, let's say the bones for all the cubes on this side. If we were going to um, selectively constrain those to a null in the center so that they could be rotated in unison, we wouldn't need to do the next thing we did, which was to move all these bones to the center. These could stay in the center of their cube, and as long as we use translate and rotate constraint for each one, they would still move in concert with that center null that we had put in the middle. So it wasn't really necessary to drag these all to the center for the scheme that we ended up with.
That's very interesting.
But we're not going to use that scheme. And so it is necessary to move these to the center. Instead of, let's get a later version of the project. I think this one will do. In this version, let me see, make sure I'm turn off the center there. What else is visible with that one? There we go. In this version, right now these bones are all hidden. I'm gonna, no, I'll select all these bones and I'll just temporarily visible them. Right now all these bones are selected, they're all visible, and they're all in the center, so they're all overlapping. The advantage of this is that each one of these cubes ultimately it rotates around this very center point of the whole structure. No matter which way they're rotating, no matter which way they're going, the center of the rotation is always going to be here. So if we move the bone for each cube to the center, we could just animate them directly and keyframe them that way and not have to worry about constraining and unconstraining them. I'll go down to, I think this is the version that has some constraints in it. Let's see, we've got one rotation, two rotations. Okay, I think that's where we left off. To achieve that motion that we're seeing right now, I did have the bones at the center, but as I said, it didn't matter that they were at the center. But what we were doing that was key, let's try one. We were adding a translate to constraint and an orient like constraint to a null that is at the center of this structure. And we did that, we would do that to like add those translate to center and orient to center to all 9 of these before we did anything. And then by doing that, it was possible to just rotate that one center bone, and that would rotate that whole set in unison. That's an attractive solution because it allows you, in some ways it's more intuitive to rotate those as a unit. I mean, that kind of looks more like the actual operation of the cube. And if you had to do something other than a standard slow in, slow out kind of in between, if you're going to try and make them, do some more complicated rotation before they got to their goal, it certainly would be easier to just have that one null to animate and have all of these follow along. But as you may recall, it was very, very time consuming to go through and add all those constraints at the beginning of the rotation. And then we had to turn them off and sort through the properties of those and set the enforcement. Here it's 100%. And we had to make sure and set all of those back to 0% when we were done with that particular group of cubes moving together and when we wanted to move on to the next group.
Exactly. Very, very labor intensive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so ultimately, that's it works. I mean, it can be done. We demonstrated it can be done. However, it's probably about twice as much work as it needs to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep the idea of the bone for each cubelet being in the center of the structure. We're going to get rid of the idea of doing the constraints. To do this in a more sane fashion, I am going to put numbers on these cubes so that they have some visual reference. I'm going to do it in a more sane manner than I did last week. So I'm going to delete, let's see, I'm going to delete that decal entirely. And let me look at our bones. I think I can get rid of these center nulls also. So I'll get rid of that. I actually, when I was experimenting later, I added a second one. I was beginning to think that I would have to use a different null for each new rotation. Eventually I realized I didn't, but for a while I was thinking I would have to do that. Although that would work. But now we're back down to just these bones. I'll go to the model here. Let's see, there's the front. The orange is the front side. Let me get rid of all these old decals from our previous baking. I'm going to save this as, let's say, 16. Okay. And I am going to bake this thing so it has a surface I can draw on. Let's see if I can get that right this time. Let's see, I have to hold down the Shift key for Bake Surface to bring up this extra requester. Let's see, maximum texture size. I think this kind of worked. Set it, what is the automatic is what it was set. I think 1024 was adequate for us. Yeah, I should, somewhere there's documentation of what these numbers mean, because I'm not sure what 10 means for resolution. Overwrite existing files. The rest of this should be okay. And it's baking away baking all of those surfaces. It's sucking up all those color surfaces that are on there and converting those into a decal. And we can see, here we go.
Are there baking tutorials in the forum? I'd like to study that a little bit more.
Well, what's your question about it?
I don't have an overview. So each face,
every patch
every face
will end up.
Okay,
Every patch in the model will end up with. In this case, it's ended up with squares, but it could be rectangular, depending upon the proportions of the patch. And I think something we noticed last time was, let's go look at here's our decals folder. If we actually right-click on the stamp here and do edit, we get a view that shows us where the actual splines are. And
okay,
so you can see these are like the little black, very thin black patches between your larger faces. There's a fair amount of this that didn't even get used. Also, notice there's a little bit of extra boundary in between each of these actual patches that it shows here. You can extend that. You can make that larger. There's a setting that allows you to do that. I forget. I didn't recall seeing that in the requester, but maybe it was there. And that would allow you, like for example, if I had something on here I wanted to blur, and the blur was more than 1 pixel, it would slop some of this blue onto this white. If I were doing, if I were in Photoshop, for example, and using a regular Photoshop blur over the entire surface because I wanted to for whatever reason, soften the appearance of it. If I had a bigger border, like let's say there were 10 pixels between these two boundaries,
Gotcha. Yeah.
it would be possible for me to use a blur that at least is less than 10 pixels, you know, and still have it happen on the face without having something slop right into the next one. Because this face on the model is not necessarily right next to this one. These the
Right.
apportionment of these, the bitmap to the patches is I'm sure there's some rule to it, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know. It
Gotcha.
almost looks like it's tried to do a sort of a best fit by putting all these tiny ones at the bottom and all these large ones at the top. I don't know if that's part of the rule or not. But we do have that map. We can paint on it now. I'll save this now.
Okay. Thank you.
Boom. 17. Baked. The big need for baking is if you were going to export your model or your animation to another renderer that doesn't understand AM materials. It's almost guaranteed that the procedural materials we have in AM won't translate directly to some other renderer. But if you bake all those surface qualities that the materials were creating into bitmaps, that is something that does transfer because almost every other renderer understands bitmaps and understands having bitmaps that control qualities like color, specular intensity, bump, transparency, reflectivity. Those are all pretty standard things.
That's a good
So
explanation.
that's I think that was the main reason that baking was created in the first place, is so people could have a way to take their textured models to another renderer.
Terrific. That's a great explanation, Rob. Thank you.
When I say when I say that out loud, it doesn't sound like something Hash would have done, but they did do it. Since they have no interest in supporting other renderers, um, there may have been some other reason. Okay, we need to invoke our 3D painter. And I need to export that model so I can load it into 3D Painter. So I'll go back to Animation Master. Here is our model with our baked. I'm going to get rid of these other surface qualities because they're not they're just a bit of clutter. Get rid of those. And I'll get rid of them out of the images folder. I just want to keep the color. There we go. Okay, save my project again. Save out the model into an MDL. Save as. Let's call it, we're in version 17, so I'll call it Rubik Cube 17. We'll go back to 3D Paint. I'll open the model here. What do you know? We're on the right directory. Okay. That does appear to be a cube. Since we have 27 cubes, but the center one isn't important, we really have 26 cubes we have to label, and there just happen to be 26 letters in the alphabet. So instead of using numbers like I did before, I'm going to label these with letters, and I'm only going to do each cube once. I was kind of putting multiple numbers on some of the cubes before. But we'll do ABC off the top here. Let me make sure I've got a, no, almost. Let's see. A, B. A higher res bitmap in my baking traces would probably avoid this pixely look, but this will be good enough for our purposes. Then I'll go D, E, F, G, H, I. Okay, that's one face. Now, I don't need to redo the sides of ones that I've already done, so that's GHI. Let's do JKL here. And we'll do the center one is going to become M. And the one on the other side is going to become N. And now let's hit N. And then we'll start, let's see, we'll go to the other side here. And we'll start with O on OPQ. OPQR. T. And OPQRST. Did I skip a letter?
I don't think so.
I didn't skip a letter, did I?
I don't think
Oh,
so.
damn. I didn't do the numbers on the bottom, the cubes on the bottom. Nope, I didn't. Okay, that's why. So let's do some undos here.
Yeah, you'll have three. You'll have three left over.
Okay.
Oh, okay. You're gonna do that way. Okay.
So MN. Okay, these three across the bottom are going to be OPQ. Okay, now okay, RST across the top here. STU V W X. Where's my undo button? There we go. Okay, we have these. Each cube has one letter on it. We'll save our maps file, save modified textures. Now we can go back to Animation Master. And if I do a render here, we should, yep, there we go. They show up. Because that overwrote the map that was already on here. I will save again.
And when you bake something, where are those maps saved to? Are they in just Do you have to save
Did
them?
you say something, Tom?
Yes. When you bake maps, are they automatically saved to your hard
Because I'm
drive?
not hearing you.
When you save the maps, or excuse me, when you bake the maps, are they automatically saved to your hard drive?
I still can't hear you. I can just barely hear you.
Okay, let me try shouting. When you save, or excuse me,
Okay.
when you bake the maps, are they automatically saved to your hard drive, or you have to save them manually?
Yeah. When you do the first baking operation, it actually creates an image file on your hard drive.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So, and it's the convention is it takes the name of the model and then appends like color or specular or ambience for whatever kind of map it is.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
So yeah, it does create the baking operation does create an actual file on your hard drive. Okay, we've got the next thing I want to do is I want to conform the names of the bones to match the label that's on the cube, so it will be easier to look at this and ascertain what bones need to be moved. Um, I'm going to delete all the animation that we have. Actually, I'm going to embed this model. Before it was just, since I reloaded it. Let's see. When I saved it out, it became unembedded. And now, to make sure that it's saved with the project, I needed to embed it again. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all that hard won animation from before. And in fact, I think I'd really like to get rid of. Let's just start a new core, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like the simplest solution.
Let's drag this thing in. Because even though I deleted those keyframes after time zero, all those constraints that happened at time zero were still there. And I'd have to go through and get rid of those. So let's just move this camera. Let's add another window here. And now, tile. Okay, now I can see what I'm doing. Oops, this thing needs to be higher. There we go. And this camera needs to be closer. And I'm going to turn this a little bit. Well, let's move the camera instead. So, about like so. There we go. That will be a nice three-sided view. Okay. Right now, there are no channels for those bones in this. I want to create a channel for every single bone at the very start. And so I will pick that model. I'll pick key model, filter, and let's see. I don't need translate anymore because I'm only going to be doing rotations. So I just have the key skeletal rotations filter on. And now I'm going to hold on the shift key. That gives me this option dialog, and I will force keyframes for the filter channels for every bone in that thing, even though the bone isn't currently selected. And now, there we go. Now we have a channel for each bone in its default position. again, I'll just revisit normally when you press this force keyframe button, it only forces keyframes on things that already exist in the timeline. And so we had to use that shift option to get it to look through the model and force keyframes on things that didn't have channels yet. So we're almost ready to go here.
That shift key is pretty handy.
Oh, I forgot one thing. I wanted to rename my bones. So let's do that. Let's go back to editing the model. Now this part is a little tricky. Okay. If I turn on bones mode here, we have all our bones at the center. There we go. Make sure they're all visible. Okay, they're all visible and they're all overlapping. But we can, let's look at our, okay, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. That's our front face. If we click on any point in this bones mode, it also identifies the bone that those points are attached to. In a previous step, we had actually gone through and assigned each of these cubelets to a specific bone. So that's something we kind of glided over a little bit here today, but that's a step we've already done. Each of these bones.
That's a good trick. I did not know that was available.
Controls
That's good.
A different cube. So I can click on a CP and it makes that bone, if these bones weren't all overlapping, that bone would also be blinking right now. But it does identify the bone. And so we're going to rename that. We know that that's bone A. So rename A. Find this one. This will be B. Click on here, that becomes C. D. E. F. G. H. I think a lot of people, when they're confronted by something like this, they look at the fact that they have to do it 27 times. And that seems daunting, but it doesn't take very long in actual practice. So there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Let's go back and look at our model. Okay, J, K, L across the top here. I'll pick a point. There's J. It helps that I have these things sanely labeled now instead of the way I did before. And L. Okay. Our center one here is M. On the other side, it's N. Underneath, let's see, OPQ. Oops, I picked something by accident here. Let's see. There's Q. And now we got the far side to do. There we go. RST. see, I wonder if I can invoke rename just from here. If I pick the SCPs and do rename. There we go. S. It was RST, wasn't it? Yeah, RST. T. UVW. Select, right click, rename, U. V. Select, rename, UVW. And let's do XYZ. So X, Y, Z. Why do I have two bones that aren't named? Did I skip something?
I was wondering that myself. One of them might be the interior one, but I don't know where the other one is.
Could be.
Go,
but let's see what 17
go through
is.
the alphabet and just check if you've got the whole alphabet on in your bones.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's see. A, B, C, D. Where's E? I should reorder these. Where's E? Did I not make an E? This would be E. Huh. Let's look at our A, B, C. Oh, did I'm somewhere along the line that got named wrong. So that's really E. It's probably when I started clicking on things in the window.
So then the extra bone is the interior bone, which is
so
not critical.
Possibly. Let's see. A. B. C. Okay. D. E. F. That's good. G. H. I. Okay. H I J K L. Where's J K L? Those are right. M should be on the side here. N is in the middle there. O P Q should be on the bottom. O P Q, and then R S T. Where's U?
Above bone 17. Above bone 17 is U.
Do I not have a U? Okay, U. Yeah, there we go. U. U, and now we don't have a V. That's the one that should be V, phone 17. So we'll rename it. U, V, W, and then X, Y, Z. Okay, now we've got it right. And this one should be an excess bone that is in the middle. Of course, they're all in the middle. But I'll just hide that anyway. I'll leave it there just in case we have forgotten something. I'm going to hide all these bones. Let's go back to our core. I should save this again. preserve our progress. Okay, let's start animating. Let's see, this still has all the old bone names. I'll delete it. Well, I wonder if I just assigned this to something else temporarily and then went back here. No, we've still got those old channels. I'm going to delete these channels. And we'll do the force keyframe again.
Now, are you on choreography 1 or 2?
I deleted the old choreography 1. However, I didn't want these offset by time, so I'm going to get rid of those. Let's try that one more time. Okay, select the model, select the filter I want, just rotation, select whole model, hold down shift, press force keyframe, choose in all filtered channels, hit OK. Damn, I did it again. Okay, actually I think these should be good enough. Okay, every one of those bones has a channel established, and it looks like they are just rotation keyframes. Channels started. Okay, pick a face or a set that you want to rotate.
Let's do the very top row. All 9 of the very top.
Okay. All the blue ones.
Correct.
So, we have A, B, C, J, K, L, and R, S, T. I'm going to write those down because it will get confusing in a second. A, B, C, J, K, L, and that was R, S, T. Yep, R, S, T. So those are the ones we want to rotate. Which way do you want to rotate?
Clockwise.
Okay. So we're going to go out to where we want our rotation to end, which is at 1 second. And we'll just go through and pick each one of these and rotate them 90 degrees clockwise. So I'll pick A. Hit my R on my keyboard for rotate manipulator. And sometimes I have to rotate around this to see which ring it is I really want. In this case, it's the blue one. So I'll grab that blue one and go until the indicator says 90 degrees. B, do the same thing. Blue. C. JKL. K. This is where having the bones named the same as what is on the face of the cube, it makes it much easier to identify what we're doing. And L. And the last 3 were RST, so I'll pick R here. Let's hope something moves. There we go. Come on, move around. There we go, 90. And T. wrong one. Wrong ring. I wanted the blue one. It's 90 degrees. So let's check out our rotation. There we go. Now already that was faster than what we did before. But that's just one rotation. The next thing we want to do is force a keyframe on everything else that is in this model so that they are locked in place. And when we move another set, for example, let's say W was a cube that we wanted to move next. We want it to be interpolating from 1 second to 2 seconds and not from 0 to 2 seconds. So I'm going to put everything, I'm going to press this force keyframe button while I had this whole model selected, and that forced keyframes on everything. Now we can go out to 2 seconds and do some more animation. Time to pick a face again. What would you like to move?
Let's try the ABC with the rest of the yellow in a counterclockwise.
Okay, counterclockwise. This face right here, right?
Yes. So you're just manually you're manually doing this. There's no nulls or no tricks. It's just manually muscling it through. That's interesting. It's working great
Right.
though.
Conceptually, that sounds harder. It sounded easier to constrain. Well, I don't know if it sounded easier to constrain them to one central null, but it for an audience watching, it probably seemed like the natural way to do it is to move those all as a set. But it isn't easier in the operation
right.
of the
No,
program.
you have to go in and
let's see. We want to go counterclockwise.
Changing those constraints
I'll
with the
select
killer.
A.
Having
Now we will have a little bit of a glitch coming up here in a second, but we will fix that. I'll rotate this 9 degrees. And B. Notice we're doing the green ring this time on these particular cubes. That was 90 degrees. C. The next one we want to move was, I should have written those down. What they were going to be. ABC. M, W, I can see W right here.
and Z. It looks like
Go back, undo this a little bit. There we go. Now we can see what we want. We want ABC, W, M, D, and Z, Q, G. Those are the 9 we have to do. I've already done ABC. Now we need W. And this time it appears to be the red ring on W. Let me let's just turn it around here a little bit. Yes, it's the red ring that is in the orientation we want to go. So grab the red ring, go 90 degrees. W, M, D. And ZQG. Z. Q. And G. Now we'll see two rotations. We're going to see a little bit of a problem here, I hope. That one, you can see they're sort of getting out of sync there a little bit. They were okay before, but now they're a little bit out of sync. And that one's getting kind of out of whack there. The reason for that is the default interpolation of the splines. I'm going to just pick bone A there. Here's, for example, the Z channel of the rotation of that bone. The default spline interpolation is to go through this keyframe and overshoot a little bit before it goes back to the next goal. We can fix that if we select these curves and choose a new default interpolation method. Instead of spline, we really want something called zero slope, which is, it's still spline interpolation, but the way the spline goes through the CP is always going to be horizontal. So I'll right click on that bounding box and choose curve. I want to set it for the whole curve. Let's see, let me make sure. Yeah, I'll pick zero slope. And now you can see, particularly on this white one, how the spline has leveled out before it departed this CP. And it's level going into this one. I don't have to do that to each bone individually. Go ahead.
Wouldn't you need to just peak everything? I would think peaking would correct all that.
Did you have a question?
Wouldn't peaking all the splines be sufficient?
I'm not hearing you if you have a question.
Okay, maybe. Can you hear me now?
Now I hear you.
Wouldn't peaking the splines be correct the problem?
But now I don't hear you.
Wouldn't,
say that again.
Peaking the splines work? Peaking?
That will work. Yeah, that will work. However, that would be another animation choice. Peaking the splines would get you exactly consistent rotation from one frame to another, very robotic look. This zero slope gets you slow in, slow out, which is a more natural kind of rotation, where something moves slow at the beginning, moves fast in the middle, and then slows into its final destination. But you're right, peaking them would also do the same thing.
If you,
however, I want to do this.
If you
go ahead.
Them, do you have to do it to each individual bone, or is there some way?
I've lost you again.
I'm going to have to get a better better microphone. If you want.
Sounds like you have an intermittent connection.
Let me try something. Yes, can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Okay. If you wanted to peak everything, do you have to do it to each?
Except as soon as you stop saying, "Can you hear me now?" That's the problem.
Sorry for laughing. It's just, it's funny.
That's all right. It's frustrating. Do you have to peak each bone, or can you group peak? Can you group peak all of it at once if you wanted to?
We're not hearing you.
Can you hear me, Rob? Robert. I'm able to hear Tom okay, so I don't.
Okay, maybe that might be a Rob situation then.
I could try and relay your question to Rob if Rob can hear me.
Huh. Interesting. Well, I hear you both now. Start speaking again, Tom.
Is there a way to peak every bone, or do you have to go in individually and set it as a peak? Can you group peak?
Here's what I was about to. Yeah. I'm going to go into curve mode and pick all of these bones.
Okay, so you.
And now it shows the curves for all of them. Okay. And so I can group select these.
Okay.
And I could indeed choose curve linear, which would be like the peak you're thinking of. And now, oops, it didn't do all of them. Let's see, I wonder which ones it didn't do. Let's try that again. I thought that would do it. Oh, there we go. Let's see, maybe I have that backwards. Let me see what happens if I just make another keyframe here. That looks linear. Well, for the moment, these are moving in perfect unison now, without any slop on the sides. But it is that robotic motion where everything is moving at exactly the same rotational speed. It doesn't have that slow in, slow out. So I will set the curve again to 0 slope. So there's 2 rotations. Let's do one more. Before I go on though, I'll want to force a keyframe on all of these at this time. Okay, pick another.
How about the
face? What would you like to do?
The middle level, clockwise.
Okay, like
yes,
this one.
The middle horizontal level.
Okay, so we want to move. Let's make a note of this. BMQ. And then V and E. And UNF. Okay. We've got our keyframe speed. We're setting on 3 seconds. So we have to do BMQ. I'll pick B. And it looks like the red ring. Which way did you want to go?
Clockwise, the whole thing.
Okay, so really I want to grab it over here.
So just to clarify, Roger, have you been able to hear me the whole time, or have I faded in and out with you also?
There was a point where you sounded like your face was further away from the mic, but I was still able to hear you.
Okay. I wonder if there's something between with.
It's possible it was me, but I'm not sure.
I just want to fix it, whatever it was. It's aggravating.
I'm hearing you now. Let's see, BMQ. And notice that after we've done 2 rotations, the ring that we need to do for each one can be quite different. BMQ, V and E. V.
So wait, you have to move these little cubes into place before you can rotate an entire row?
We're doing each cube individually. That means we don't have to do all that constraining and unconstraining that we had before. And that's why this has turned out to be quite faster. Also, this is easier to edit after the fact. If you had to go and change something, trying to rethink backwards through all of those constraints and unconstraints would be quite daunting. Let's get U. N. And F. Let's take a look. There we go. Let's see if our curves are actually Yeah, it looks like we were getting zero sloped curves when we created new keyframes. So these curves are now set to default to zero slope, and any future ones we make should be appropriately zero slope. So we've got rotation, rotation, rotation in standard Rubik's Cube fashion, and we did that in just about an hour. I think this is the better workflow overall.
Yeah, I think it is. Keeping track of constraints on and off would be daunting.
Yes. So, thus ends our journey through the Rubik's Cube. If you were after you were done animating, you would probably turn this decal off so that the letters weren't on there anymore, and you'd be back to your originally modeled cube.
That,
And no one would be the wiser that you'd ever done
that's
that.
very smart. I like that. Well, once again, thank you.
If I were going to go on, I would first force a keyframe on there, and then I'd go to 4, and I'd pick a new set that I wanted to rotate and jump in and do like I had done. I wish I had thought of this first, but sometimes you have to do something the wrong way to get an overall view of what the possibilities are.
And of course, the key is you set up a model which is mathematically perfect. Each one of those bones is perfectly connected where it should be. And I think that was critical.
That does help. Although we are using your original model, which has a few little, just very slight. You can see like that one sticking out a little bit
Right.
more. If we had, but you were really close to begin with, so it's not a big problem here. If we were going to do this in a production setting, we would probably do that scenario I showed last time, where we just created one cube and then used the duplicate wizard to exactly
Right.
duplicate it at 2 centimeter intervals and things
Right.
like that.
Okay.
But for our purposes,
Yeah.
this has demonstrated the concept
Fools anybody.
quite well.
Yeah, very cool.
Are there any other Animation Master problems or questions before
Not for
we
me, no.
close out here?
I have a question that's
Okey-doke.
not animation master related, but I was just curious. I was looking online to buy a copy of After Effects, and I know you can license it yearly, but I saw that they're selling some copies. It looks like a hack. For $50, you can download a version of After Effects with a license key. Does anybody know what you'll be getting if you bought?
Yeah, that sounds. I would be wary of that. If I were going to try and buy After Effects cheap, I might try and buy someone who's selling their installation CD on eBay.
Yeah, that's what I did. I bought an older version of it.
That is the probably the more likely avenue. I'm pretty sure that if you're downloading getting a download and a user key, that's probably not a strictly legal way to do it.
Right. I mean, but do you think it would work? I'm just curious. I was puzzled that, or is it just a virus?
You won't know until you install it, I guess. That's the problem.
I mean, I guess if you have
Russian
$50
roulette.
to lose and a computer you can experiment with, it might be fun to find out. But
Yeah, it sounds a little
Yeah.
a little
The
tricky
internet is a big. The internet is a big, mysterious place, and you never know what you're going to find.
there. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that.
Um,
I would be more likely to buy
Yeah.
someone who's selling a used installation DVD
Yeah, that would be the best solution. Yeah.
or CD. Now, I'll warn you that if you buy that older version, you'll be like me, where you're making projects that the current versions of After Effects won't be able to load. That's the reason I haven't upgraded. That's the reason I'm still using my year 2000 version of After Effects, is because I know the current versions can't load my current projects.
Mm.
But that's probably not a major problem for most of us, since I'm still making do with that 20-year-old version of After Effects. It does the things I typically do.
Right. Yeah, that is a great program. That really is.
I mean, if you're not
Yeah.
trying to exchange data
Okay.
with people in a production environment, it's really not a big deal. And if you are in a situation where you're
Yeah.
in that position, then you can buy the yearly subscription and get a write off because I'm assuming you're making enough to pay for it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or have them buy you a copy.
If you incorporated yourself as a business, that would
Yeah.
be a valid business expense. It's a lot easier to write off rental, a monthly fee than it is a purchase. Because purchases have to be depreciated over time, whereas rentals are immediately deductible. My 1 year of trying to be a freelance artist, I realized that the record keeping for this depreciation stuff was so absurdly complicated that I never wanted to do it again.
Yeah, that's
And it's our
I
tax
think
code
that's
hard at work.
I, there's part of me that suspects that's a way of keeping people on the corporate plantation, so to speak, as opposed to striking out on their own.
It does feel,
Just trying to find the customers is enough to keep me on the corporate plantation
yeah.
because it was always hard finding people who had money and wanted to
Well,
pay for
that's
things
it
was
too.
always
That's the
difficult.
other part of trying to be a that when you're an artist, right, and you're trying to do something for somebody, they always, well, come on, here's a 20 and a six pack. That's fair.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
I think the quickest way to conclude a conversation where someone's scoping you out as a potential freelance hire is to tell them how much it will
Yeah,
cost,
that'll,
and then they're not interested anymore.
that always,
And if that doesn't scare them off, tell them that your standard policy is that they have to pay 1/3
yeah.
up front. And I've never had anyone survive that. That was okay. Well, we'll get back
We'll
to you.
we'll get back to you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they don't
Easy.
have that 1/3 up front, they probably don't have the 2/3 at the back end either.
Well, you could do it just for the sheer honor of working on their project,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I've done that. I've ended up working on people's projects and not getting paid because I was foolish. I let them have the finished work and took their word for it that they would pay me eventually.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Uh,
Last minute problems or questions?
that was it. Thank you, Rob. I think that's a good solution, and it's. My only question is when you click on each individual bone to spin it, you are manually grabbing the appropriate ring. And would it be
I'll show
easier?
you.
Would it be easier to just do a mathematical input the rotate XYZ axis on the bone, or did you feel that
I don't
spinning it
I don't
manually was
believe
easy?
that would be easier.
Okay, that was
I think it is intuitively easier to grab that ring just to if you can, as long as you can see the ring. Sometimes it's easier to go to wireframe mode and then hit R. And now this probably doesn't show well on the screen capture, but it's on the screen here. It's fairly obvious to me where the red, green, and blue rings are. And if I
okay.
do a little bit of rotate, I can see which direction I want to go. If I want to take this center thing and go like this, it'd be the blue one that I rotate. I'm not sure that using, I mean, you do have these object properties. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if this would get you what you wanted or not. You might end up trying all three before you found the right one, because I'm not sure that you'd still end up
What I
looking at
u-
these rings to figure out which way you wanted to go.
Right. What I usually do is grab the ring and jiggle it, and it tells me which axis is correct, and then I put it
Yeah,
back to
that will
zero
work.
and then manually input. Because trying to slide those things around sometimes, what do they jump to, like 5-degree increments? And sometimes it's a little tricky.
Yeah, you can set that increment here in Tools, Options, um, Units. Let's, here we go. No.
Okay,
Rotate
your
snap
screen-
angle, 5.
Your screen isn't available.
Oh, I'm not sharing. Okay, whoops. Oh, that's because I didn't finalize the. Here in options,
Oh,
go to
great.
tools, options, units. Here is rotate snap angle is defaults to 5. You could set that to anything you want. If you want to just arbitrarily rotate any angle without setting that to something absurdly low like 1, you can hold down the Alt key while you turn this ring, and you can do any kind of rotation in probably, I guess that's probably 1 degree increments. Actually, it's even less. I can jiggle this thing here without changing the numbers, so I'm getting rotations that are less than 1 degree right now. So that is also possible without having to change that minimum rotate snap angle. I like having a fairly large snap because it's easy to go through like a 90-degree rotation with that 5-degree snap.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, great talking to you guys. Thank you for bringing the interesting topic, Tom. Good talking to you, Roger, and I'll see you guys in the forum and see you next week.
Take it easy, guys.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.